Osu Castle is also known as Fort Christiansburg or the Castle, is a castle located in Osu, Ghana, on the coast of the Gulf of Guinea in Africa. The area was first occupied in 1550 by the Portuguese, though in the 17th century, Portuguese influence diminished. The area came under the control of Sweden in the 1650s, led by the German trader Heinrich Karloff. In 1652, he was given permission to build a small fortified lodge by the King of Accra, with whom he had previously done business. In 1660, control passed to the Netherlands, but it was soon lost to Denmark-Norway. In 1657, Karloff had again travelled to Africa, this time representing Denmark-Norway. He aimed to conquer the forts he had previously established, which he found easy at Osu. In its early life, the castle was primarily used in the gold and ivory trade, but under Dano-Norwegian control, it increasingly dealt with slaves. Osu Castle was located close to two other forts. Fort Crèvecoeur was controlled by the Dutch and Fort James by the British. The settlement at Osu was too small to store sufficient goods to compete with the others. Consequently, Denmark-Norway purchased adjoining land and expanded the building, naming it Fort Christiansburg after the reigning Danish King Christian. This is not to be confused with the slightly later Royal Palace in Copenhagen. Denmark-Norway would occupy the fort for most of the next 100 years, with some interruptions, and for much of that time it served as the capital of the Gold Coast of Denmark-Norway. The Akwamu ethnic group occupied the fort in 1693, their overpowering. The occupants, who were reduced by death and disease while disguised as merchants. Asamini, the Akwamu leader, occupied the fort for a year, trading with merchants from many nations. In 1694, Asamini sold the fort back to Denmark-Norway for 50 marks of gold, 400 troy ounces, worth 200,000 to 250,000 in 2008, but retained the keys, which are still in the ethnic group's possession to this day. Extensions were made later that century, however, and structural improvements were made in 1824. In the 1770s, the Danes at Osu became involved in a conflict with Dutch-controlled Accra. In 1850, the British bought all of Denmark's Gold Coast possessions for 10,000 between 850,000 and 1.5 meters in 2007, including Fort Christiansburg. An earthquake in 1862 destroyed most of the upper floors, which were rebuilt in wood. Later that century, the castle became the seat of the colonial government. It was abandoned by the British colonial powers from 1890 to 1901. Within this period, it was used as a constabulary mess and later a psychiatric asylum. It became the seat of government again in 1902. In 1950, in 1957, when Ghana became independent, with Queen Elizabeth II as head of state, the fort became Government House, the residence of the Governor-General. When Ghana became a republic in 1960, it became the residence of Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah.